Today I'm going to talk about a really exciting trend, which is acrylic wedding invitations. Like this, I have this camera set up to give you a close-up on a lot of things, and I'll talk about how to make them, what they cost, what the printing methods are, etc. One thing you might be concerned about is the environmental impact of your wedding invitations. I do have a video on eco-friendly wedding invitation options that you can access in the corner, but acrylic itself is not super eco-friendly. I'll discuss a couple options that are a little bit better, but it basically is just a piece of plastic. So if that's really important to you, check out the other video and maybe go in a different direction than acrylic. Okay, so first of all, what is acrylic? Here it is. It's just plastic. Just clear plastic. It comes in a lot of different colors. You can get it in frosted. You can get it in a lot of different weights as well. These two are both an 1/8 inch thick, which is, it's really hard. I can't bend it. It's basically a board. This one is 1/4 inch, which you might use for something like a table number. You could use this for an invitation as well. It's very, very thick. And then also acrylic comes in 1/16 inch, like this one, which I can actually bend. It's a little bit thinner than even the 1/8 inch, but I feel like 1/8 inch is the most popular one that we see for wedding invitations. Really nice, feels really luxurious when someone were to take that out. And you'll see that all of these have kind of a backing on them. That's how acrylic is going to come for the most part. Your printer may provide it not with the backing on it for you, but that's just to protect it within shipping. So whenever you're handling this, you want to be very careful because it's easy to get dust. It's easy to get fingerprints. You might want to wear gloves and avoid touching it or putting on any dusty surfaces if you can. Acrylic is not super cost effective, which I'll explain in a minute, but there are a couple other options that you might have seen. So there's this, what's called acetate option, which is actually just a piece of paper. If you're old like me, you might remember overhead projector sheets. That's kind of what this reminds me of, and you can print on it. So for this one, we used it to create a framing effect. We printed the line artwork, and then it comes off and you just have the watercolor alone, but you could print the entire invitation on some printers. You also might see vellum a lot, and this is used often as an overlay. So for instance, you'd have a wedding invitation and you might attach the vellum on top and have it swing. It could say something. You can also use vellum as a wrap. You can wrap it around a wedding invitation, attach it with a wax seal, that kind of thing. We have a lot of vellum invitation examples on our website. But both of these options will be a little bit more cost effective than acrylic, but you do need to still find a printer who has the capability to print on vellum or on acetate, as neither of these can generally be printed on your home printer. It's a little bit more difficult to print on these things. So how do you print on acrylic? Generally, what you'll find is UV printing. And see, this one's all white. It looks really beautiful. Some printers print on a clear film, like this one, but clear, and then paste it over the acrylic. So what you'll find is there's actually a film that could be peeled off that's got your design on it. So make sure if you want to print on acrylic directly that you're actually getting something where it's printed directly on. So when you're printing with UV, a lot of times what you have to do for color is to print white and then print the color over it. So when I turn this over, it's completely white. And then when you look really closely, I don't know if I can get it on camera, but when I look really closely at this, I can just barely see the white that is then printed over. You can also foil stamp or screen print on acrylic, but those are going to be potentially a little bit more costly and depend on the number of colors that you're using. You'll also want to find a printer who's really familiar with acrylic because it's different than your typical foil stamping or screen printing options. Check out the video in the corner for more information about invitation print methods. And of course, you can also use calligraphy, certain calligraphy inks on acrylic, and then this is a really popular style lately, especially with signage and table numbers. This is just acrylic paint, like $1 paint from Michael's. Mix your color, tack it on. The one thing that's interesting is you're painting on the back usually, so whatever you put down first is actually what's going to show up on the front. So if you're doing multiple colors like a watercolor effect, you'll want to put whatever you want on the front first, and then you can paint over it on the back with your other colors. You could, in theory, also scratch this paint off, which is kind of nice if you're doing calligraphy on something, but if you are using this method for your own wedding, you want to make sure after it's done that you keep it really protected, and when you travel, put some tissue paper over it or something to keep it from getting scratched. The UV printing will be a little bit more solid, but it still is possible that it could be scratched off since it's not embedded into the acrylic like regular printing is kind of embedded into the paper. So why does acrylic printing cost so much? First of all, it's a piece of plastic, so it's a little bit more expensive than paper, of course. It's harder to make, and finding it in the exact like size and shape you want is gonna be more difficult. To cut paper down to size, you just cut it. You can also stack cut it and do 200 pieces at a time. You can't do that with acrylic. You have to break it, or in general for wedding invitations, you want to laser cut it. So that is more expensive. The other thing is that acrylic is really thick and doesn't bend. Even if you are using the 16th inch, it still doesn't bend that much comparatively to even like a 3 or 4 piece invitation suite. When you're at the post office, as soon as you get into the territory where something can't be bent over a table, that's when you get past letter rates and go into parcel or package rates. So all acrylic wedding invitations are going to need to be sent with a parcel weight. Even if you do that 1/16th, you can try to get away with it, but chances are something weird's going to happen. So you want to go ahead and pay that parcel rate for your postage. So when you do acrylic for your wedding invitations, not only are you paying more to have them cut to size, you're paying more for the printing method, you're also paying more for the postage. And of course, you can't put them in regular envelopes because when they're getting mailed, the corners will often chip. You can see both of these pieces that have been in my samples for a while are already chipped on the corners because it's just really easy for corners to get chipped. You don't want to pay a lot for a really nice, thick, luxurious wedding invitation and then have it ruined in the mail because you tried to cheap out and send it in a regular envelope. So in general, if it's 1/8 inch or thicker, we like to send it in a box. If you do the 16th inch thick acrylic, then you can send it in what's called a thick elope, or it's an envelope made out of cardstock. So it's a little bit thicker, it protects it a little bit more, and generally you want to size up a little bit so that you have some extra room for the acrylic and the corners aren't really pressing against the edges of the envelope. Now, of course, this adds price too because you get into a point where the box or the thicker envelope can't be printed on. So you can't do printed addresses, but you have to pay for calligraphy or printed address labels that you can wrap around, and that can get a little bit more expensive as opposed to just printing on a regular envelope. So that was like 10 reasons why acrylic invitations are a little bit more expensive than your regular paper invitations, but it doesn't mean they're not worth it and they're not so beautiful. Your guests will absolutely love receiving something like this, and I mean, they'll definitely keep something like this. Now, if you want to incorporate acrylic into your wedding, but you're not sure if you can afford, or you want to go the route of doing the acrylic wedding invitations, you can go for something smaller like a place card or an escort card that's made out of acrylic. Like I said, you can do calligraphy on this, and I don't charge any more to do calligraphy on acrylic than I do calligraphy on paper. You just have to pay more for the material because it costs more than paper. So that's a really good option to incorporate acrylic into your wedding without going the acrylic wedding invitation route. And I highly recommend, if you're interested in that look, it's so modern and clean and beautiful, check out the acetate option or even the vellum option if budget is concerned, because both of these provide a very similar overall vibe and go with that like really modern, clean aesthetic without breaking the bank quite as much as acrylic can do. I hope you enjoyed this video. Tell us in the comments what you think about the acrylic wedding invitation trend, if you like it, if you hate it, and if you're worried about the environmentally friendly nature of everything, check out the video that I've linked for you below, which talks all about eco-friendly options for your wedding invitations.